In 2023, the global game streaming market was valued at over $11 billion. That single number represents one of the fastest financial explosions in entertainment history. And most people have absolutely no idea how we got here, or what it cost the traditional gaming industry to get there. Welcome to Pixel Pulse. Today we are pulling back the curtain on one of the most disruptive shifts the gaming world has ever seen. In the next 10 minutes, you will find out exactly how game streaming platforms rewrote the rules of an entire industry, who won, who lost, and the one brutal truth about game streaming that the biggest companies in Silicon Valley spent millions trying to suppress. By the end, you will never look at your gaming library the same way again. Let us start at the beginning, because this story does not start with Netflix or Amazon. It starts in 2008, with a company called OnLive. The concept was radical for its time. Instead of buying a console or a high-end PC, players could stream games directly to almost any device, a laptop, a tablet, even a basic television, with all the heavy processing done on remote servers. OnLive launched publicly in 2010, and for a brief moment, it felt like the future had arrived early. But internet infrastructure was not ready. Latency issues made the experience frustrating. OnLive shut down in 2015, quietly absorbed by Sony. It was a failure, but it planted a seed that would take years to fully grow. Sony took those ashes and built PlayStation Now, launching it in 2014. It was one of the first major subscription-based game streaming services backed by an industry giant. At its peak, PlayStation Now offered over 800 games streamable on demand. The service was later rebranded as PlayStation Plus Premium in 2022, folded into Sony's broader subscription ecosystem. It was not perfect, but it proved something important. Players were willing to pay monthly for access rather than ownership, if the value proposition was right. Meanwhile, something else was happening in parallel. Bandwidth costs were dropping. Cloud computing infrastructure was exploding in scale. Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud were racing to build the kind of server density that game streaming actually required to work. This was not a gaming story. It was an infrastructure story. And that infrastructure was quietly making everything that came next possible. Then came Google Stadia in 2019. Google entered the market with enormous fanfare, promising to kill the console generation entirely. No downloads, no updates, instant play. The pitch was compelling. The execution was not. Stadia failed to build a meaningful exclusive game library. Developers were skeptical. Players were confused about the pricing model. In January 2023, Google shut Stadia down entirely, offering refunds to users. It was a stunning collapse from one of the most powerful technology companies on Earth. But even in its failure, Stadia taught the industry something priceless. Content is everything. Infrastructure without compelling games is just expensive hardware doing nothing. Here is what nobody talks about when they discuss the streaming wars. The real winner was not a streaming platform at all. It was Microsoft. While Google was stumbling and Sony was iterating, Microsoft was executing a long-game strategy that most analysts completely missed until it was already done. Xbox Game Pass launched in 2017. By 2023, it had over 34 million subscribers. Microsoft acquired Activision Blizzard for $68.7 billion, the largest acquisition in gaming history, specifically to load Game Pass with content. Microsoft was not building a streaming service. It was building a content empire that streaming would eventually deliver. This is the strategic shift that changed everything. Game streaming did not just change how games are delivered. It fundamentally changed how games are valued. In the old model, a game was a product. You paid $60, you owned it. Publishers made money at the point of sale. In the streaming model, a game is a retention tool. Its value is measured not in units sold but in hours played and subscribers retained. This changes what developers are incentivized to build. Longer games. More content updates. More engagement loops. The entire creative calculus shifts the moment ownership leaves the equation. And that shift has real consequences for smaller developers. When a platform like Game Pass or PlayStation Plus signs an independent studio to a day-one deal, that studio receives a lump sum payment upfront rather than earning per sale. For some studios, this is a lifeline. guaranteed revenue before a single player buys anything. For others, it is a trap. If a game performs extraordinarily well as a traditional release, the lump sum deal means the developer earns a fraction of what they might have made. The streaming model democratizes distribution, but can quietly cap the ceiling for breakout success. But here is what nobody talks about in mainstream gaming coverage. Game streaming also accelerated the death of the mid-tier game. In a subscription world, players feel less financial pressure to commit to a single title. They sample more. They move on faster. Games that might have survived on word of mouth for weeks now get abandoned in days. This has pushed publishers toward either massive blockbuster investments or ultra-low-budget indie titles. The middle layer, competent $30 games that used to fill retail shelves, has largely disappeared, squeezed out by a streaming economy that rewards scale over craft. The hardware implications are equally profound. For decades, each console generation was defined by a physical box. Players upgraded their hardware to access new experiences. Game streaming breaks that cycle. Xbox explicitly stated that Game Pass is designed to reach players regardless of what device they own. Microsoft even released a standalone streaming stick, essentially a television dongle that runs Xbox games without any console at all. This is not a small product announcement. This is a declaration that the console as a piece of hardware may eventually become optional. Sony, facing this pressure, has moved carefully. PlayStation remains hardware-focused, using exclusives like God of War and Spider-Man as reasons to own a PlayStation 5 specifically. But even Sony has expanded PlayStation Plus tiers aggressively, acknowledging that subscription revenue is now structurally necessary at scale. The two largest console makers in the world are operating from fundamentally different philosophies, and game streaming is the fault line between them. The data on player behavior tells a fascinating story. According to a 2022 report by Newzoo, players on subscription services spend on average 40% more time gaming per week than players who purchase titles individually. More access creates more play. But that same report found that willingness to pay for individual game purchases declined among heavy subscription users. The more people stream, the less they want to buy. This feedback loop is reshaping retail permanently. Physical game sales have declined every year since 2018, not entirely because of streaming, but streaming is accelerating the erosion at a measurable rate. What does this all mean for the next 10 years? The trajectory points toward a world where 2 or 3 massive subscription platforms dominate the gaming landscape the way Netflix and Spotify dominate their respective fields. The casualties will likely be mid-sized publishers who lack the catalog depth to negotiate favorable platform deals and lack the budget to compete with first-party blockbusters. The beneficiaries will be players who gain access to enormous libraries at relatively low monthly costs, and hardware manufacturers who can sell affordable low-power streaming devices rather than expensive proprietary consoles. The deepest irony of the game streaming revolution is this. The technology that was supposed to free gaming from hardware dependency has made the giants of technology, Microsoft, Sony, Amazon, Google, more powerful than ever before. Streaming requires infrastructure, and infrastructure requires capital that only the largest companies on Earth can provide. The barrier to entry has not fallen. It has risen. Just moved upstream. Game streaming changed the industry not by making games cheaper to make or easier to create, but by fundamentally altering who controls the pipeline between developer and player. That control is worth more than any single game will ever be. And the companies that understood that first are the ones writing the rules everyone else now has to follow. Before you go, if you learned something new today, hit that like button right now.